Hey guys, alright, I'm back here today on this panel repair on this truck, and I didn't figure you wanted to watch me grind metal for an hour and a half, so I've been cleaning this up. This weld I made last night, I've been cleaning it up, but I got a little bit left. I'll show you how I do it. You want to be a little bit careful. You don't want to overheat the metal because, again, you don't want it to warp on you. So what I do is I'll take, let me get this turned around here, the handle. Whoops. Ah. Okay. I'll take my grinder and I'll knock down the high spots, and then I'll angle my grinder so that it's kind of at a 45-degree angle to the weld. So I'm kind of trying to put a bevel right on the end of it, and I'll knock it down that way, and then I'll come in from the side and I'll run across it back and forth like this to try to blend the two together. And you can see I've done that here along there. So let me do that real quick, finish this weld up, and then we'll go to the next step of this one. This metal cleanup, I guess you call it. All right, here we go. Let me get you guys in here so you can kind of see better what I'm doing. Get you right in there on that corner. I don't know if that's... All right, there you go. You can see that pretty good, I think. All right. So let's clean this up real quick and finish grinding this weld down. All right, so now we got this cleaned off, and you can see I was moving the grinder back and forth, trying to get that blended together pretty well. So that's how it looks like when it's done. I cut a little bit too much there. When I get my welder back out, I'm probably going to touch that up and re-grind it, because I cut a little bit too much off that corner. But that's the good thing about metal. If you cut a little bit too much, you can always weld it back again and then grind it back down. No big deal. Okay, so now that we're done with that, I'll zoom you guys back out so you can see what's going on here. All right. Now that we're done, I don't want that much. Now that we're done with that, now I'm going to switch back to my sanding disc, and we're going to go over it again with the sanding disc, kind of smooth it out. This is pretty rough texture. It'd be really good to put body filler on top of that, because it'd really stick good with that bare metal that's got a rough edge to it. But we're not going to do that yet. I'm going to let the body shop do that. I'm just going to get it ready for them. So I'm just going to clean it up a little bit so it looks a little better. This shouldn't take too long, so let's do that real quick. And since this is pretty warm, I'm going to start back over here, let that cool off a little bit, try to keep the heat out of it. All right. My battery died. I'd recommend you guys I don't have one, but I don't have one here. But if you're going to do this, especially if you're going to do it very much at all, I recommend using a corded drill, because I just cleaning this up right here. So I went through, this is a 5 amp hour. I burned it. I ran it dead. I had a 6 amp hour before that. I ran it dead. And now I'm down to a 2 amp hour just to do this out here. So a corded grinder would take care of that problem. So I'd rather use a corded grinder, but this is all they have, so this is what I'm using. Okay. All right. Now we got that all cleaned up. I went up into that a little further than I wanted to, but it doesn't matter. It's going to have to be painted anyhow. I'm still hitting body filler up here. I don't know what the deal is, but I have no idea why they need body filler all the way up here for a rust that was down there. But anyhow, that's the way it is. So now we can wipe this off and we'll take a closer look at it. All right, let's take a closer look. So this is basically the finished product that you want to have when you're doing this kind of work. Let me zoom out so you can see what I'm looking at. So now you can see this is nice and smooth. I can run my hand on it. I'm not catching any rough edges. And this is a really easy transition. If you look down the side here, you can see basically I'm gonna have to have a layer of filler right in here. The first layer is gonna go right here, and then they're gonna feather it out, and then they might have to go a little higher, a little further down with the second layer. But that's, you know, it's not gonna be a 1/2 inch thick. It's not gonna look anything like it did before, and this is all brand new metal now. All the rust is gone. Now, of course, you're gonna say, well, what about where you welded here and you burned all the stuff off? Well, that's true, but when I put the inside piece in here, which I'm gonna do next, I'll show you how to keep water from getting up in there. And when that happens, when you keep the water off of it, you know, obviously over time, like I said before, over time, this is going to show a little bit of rust, you know, but it's not gonna get soaked with water every time you drive down the road where it just continues to rust, and it's not going to get, they're not going to get any salt up in there in the wintertime, because it won't be able to get up in here, because I will seal this here, and I'll show you how to do that in another one of my steps. But what little exposed metal that's up there from welding is going to be fine. And actually I can reach up through the inner fender on this side here, and I can reach up through the gas tank door here. And I'm going to try to get up in there and spray as much of that as I can. I don't know how much of it I can reach, but I'm going to try to undercoat it even after I've welded it in. I'm going to try to undercoat it and make it look, you know, seal it up as best I can. I don't know how much of it I can reach, but I'm going to try to reach as much of it as I can. So we'll see how that goes. So anyhow, that's what that looks like. That's looking pretty good. This little corner, I don't think I'm going to mess with it, because after I sanded it down, it's fine. There's a little bit of a spot there, but body filler will fill that in. I'm not worried about it. If I try to weld it, I'm just going to burn through it anyhow, so I'm just going to leave it alone. It'll be fine the way it is. But now we're ready to basically put a protective coating on the outside of this panel. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but if you look, the corners, see why you don't want a 90-degree bend? Even with a rounded corner, I still got a little bit of warpage in that corner and a little bit of warpage in that corner. But like I said, a good body man will get behind there, and he'll pop them dents out and smooth it out. Get a body hammer and smooth that out, and it should be fine. You know, you can go through this gas door right up in there and get to that dent. And now when there, you can go up through the inner fender. So I don't know if when I'm up in there, I may try to mess with it a little bit, but I don't know, we'll see. But anyhow, that's what it looks like at this point. So now I need to prep it and then seal it away from the elements. So let's do that next. And then we'll, after that, I got to pull the tire off and start working on that inside piece, okay? So I'll be back here in a little bit. I got to get all the stuff ready to... All right, sorry, I dropped my phone and turned it off. So let me give me a few minutes to get everything together to do the prepping on this, to get it sealed up, and we'll do that, and then we'll move on to the next step. So let me get all this stuff together, and then I'll be back to show you guys what I got to do here. All right, I'll be back in a little bit. All right, guys. First thing I want to do here before I get started on sealing this thing up, I want to sand it off a little bit more. So now I gotta, you remember I showed you guys those 180 grit quarter sheet sandpaper pieces I bought. So I'm gonna go over it with one of those and just kind of clean up and rough it up a little bit so the paint sticks to it pretty good. Well, I was until this thing decided I don't want to stay on there. That's not good. I really need that sheet of sandpaper to stay in there. Trying to get it to go in there. All right, let's try that. Alright, so now that I got that done, I'm going to take my brake cleaner and a towel again. I want to clean this off, get all this dust off of here so I can get tape to stick. Take some brake cleaner on a rag. I got a different rag this time. I want a kind of a clean rag. All right, and I'm going to wipe this down. This way my tape and my paint will stick to it. There we go. All right, we got a little bit off there, you can see. I'll do it one more time. Make sure you get the inside here. And I just doing that little bit with that sander, you can see where I'm starting to come through that EPTM coating, whatever it's called. That's how thin that stuff is. It's pretty useless other than keeping the panel from rusting before the Taiwanese people sell it to you. I got some tape here. I hope I can use it. It looks kind of old. Let's see how much luck we have getting it off of here. Hopefully I can make use of it. Come on. There we go. Now I'm going to tape this off. And I sanded just a little bit beyond where my bare metal is. So I'm going to put my sandpaper, or not my sandpaper, my tape right on that edge where that paint has been sanded down. So I'm just going to start going around, taping this off. Like so. And yes, when I'm done with this, it's going to have a tape line, but this is not the final product either. Obviously, when you take it to the body shop, they'll paint it, and it'll won't have tape lines then. I'm not worried about it today. I'm just trying to seal it from the elements so I don't get it. Doesn't rust on me. Not looking for perfection here, you know. Doesn't have to be exactly precise, just as long as it's close. tape is not the greatest tape. One thing I hate about masking tape, you buy it, if you don't use the whole roll, 6 months later it's stuck to itself, and especially if you leave it in your garage and it gets hot. And it doesn't want to come off the roll anymore. Now I'm going to go out and
It's so bad. They're still doing like work and they're not
and go with another piece of tape beyond that one. This tape's so old, I'm not worried about using a lot of it because it's not much good anyhow. I'll just use it instead of, normally I would get newspaper and just tape this off, but this will work too. I know it's exciting sitting there watching me put tape on this truck, right? Not really. I can understand. Dang it, come on, tape. Keeps wanting to tear on me. Not come off the roll. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get this in and then we'll be done. Almost there. This tape is not cooperating very well, but it's getting there. All right. One more piece here. I could go around and put another strip of tape, but I think 3 is going to be enough. As long as you're careful with your spray cans, 3 should be plenty. All right. Now I need my... You guys remember, got this stuff from Harbor Freight, self-etching primer. And what this means is it has a chemical in it that kind of etches itself into the metal, grabs onto the bare metal or any metal, and holds the primer in there a whole lot better than just regular primer does. And it seals a lot better too. Again, as I shake the can, I'm rotating into my hand like that, and then I'm going to spin it to get all the stuff out of the bottom. And you can even turn it upside down when you shake it if you want to. I shake this up really good. It's got them chemicals in there. You want to make sure those get really mixed in really well. All right, that should be good enough. So now we're just gonna put a coat of primer on here. I don't really have to put the primer up here on the black part, but down here I will, because this is very thin. This isn't going to look fantastic when I'm done because it's not finished bodywork. But it'll look okay. It'll look better than it did before I started with that giant rust hole in it. All right, now we're going to let that flash off, and what that means when you flash off is it means you let the paint thinner that's in the paint, you let it flash off, you let it dry to the point to where it starts getting dull before you put on another coat. So it's still shiny right now, so we'll give it a minute, let it flash off, let it dry out a little bit, and then we'll put another coat on there. Give it a minute. Basically, you want it to where if you touch it with your finger, you don't get anything on your finger like that right there. That's pretty much dry. I got a little tiny bit of a fingerprint there because it's still wet. You don't want to slam your finger on it, just barely touch it. But it's still, there's other areas that haven't flashed off yet, so I'm going to wait a little longer. Let it all flash off. So what do you guys think so far? I mean, does this make any sense to you? Is this something you guys want to try yourself? Obviously, you have to have a welder. You have to know how to weld. You have to have grinders and drills and, you know, buy the materials that I bought. But to take this truck to a body shop and have this work done that I've done here, just the work without the paint would probably cost you $1,500. And I've spent 3 days and about $200 on materials, and I've done it myself. Well, I mean, obviously, I have a welder, and we have grinders and drills, so, you know, you don't have a welder and stuff. But what you could do, here's an idea for you guys. If you don't have a welder, cut it all out like I did. Get your grinder, cut it out, clean it all up, undercoat everything on the inside like I did, get it all ready, and then get your panel, your new panel ready, and screw it in place with the screws, and then find a guy who's either got like a mobile welding service, or a shop that's close by your house that does welding, and take it to him and say, hey, what would you charge me to weld all these screw holes shut, and then just spot weld all the way around this panel to attach it, and then pay them to weld it. You know, I'm going to say probably $100, maybe $200 at the most to do that, but still cheaper than a body shop. And then take it back to your house, grind it all down, prep it like I'm doing here, paint it, and then save up a little bit of money, take it to the body shop, and have them finish it for you. So, you know, that's also an option. All right, we're going to go ahead and put another coat on here. I'm going to shake this thing up a little more. It doesn't really matter which way you go with this paint, because you're not trying to get a finish coat on it. You're just trying to seal it from the elements. So it doesn't matter which way you go. You can go that way, you can go this way, whatever you're comfortable with. Just want to make sure you get a nice build up of primer on there. All right, that's coat number 2. I've got some pinholes in here, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray like a kind of a straight shot into them. Just like that. I'm not going to fill them in entirely, but if I get some paint in the hole, it's going to help seal out the water and all that. Now, obviously, after I'm done with this, you can't just drive this car for the next 2 years before you take it to the body shop. You gotta get it there probably within, I'd say 2 to 3 months. The most you'd want to wait, because I mean this is spray paint. It's not automotive quality paint, so it's not gonna last forever. I'm gonna go back and hit these again. I'm just trying to get a nice heavy coat of primer in these holes. I try to seal them up, and I can actually use my finger on that. All the pinholes that are in here, I'm just trying to kind of fill them up with primer so they at least keep some of the water out. I don't know if it'll keep all the water out, but some of it. Of course, I got runs, but I'm not worried about runs. This is, like I said, this is temporary. It's not the finished product, obviously. I'm just trying to keep it keep wire out of it as much as I can until I can get it to the body shop and get it painted. This actually works pretty good to take your finger and just dab over them holes. This paint, this self-etching primer is pretty thick stuff, so obviously you can tell that because I'm spraying it on here and it's got runs in it. So I'm spraying it on real heavy. But if you take your finger and daub it over holes like this, it pretty much fills them all in. All right, now at this point, obviously I got to let this dry for a little bit before I can, I could put another coat of paint over it, I guess, but I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to keep messing with it and fill in all them little pinholes with this primer. And then I want it to dry completely, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to sand it again with my 180 grit sander, and then we'll put more primer on. Okay, so I'll stop the camera for now, and I'll mess with this, and then I'll come back when I'm done. All right, so that's, well, here, let me get you guys up close so you can see what this looks like now before I turn the camera off. So basically you got, like, see right there, there's a little pinhole. You just take your finger and you just smear the wet primer over it before it dries. There's a pinhole there. And just like shove it in there. See that, how it filled that in? There's one there. And you can, as long as this primer's wet, you can keep doing this. So basically what you're doing is, if there's any pinholes left from the welding process, which there is a few, because there's, you're welding new metal to old metal, so you're going to have some imperfections in the weld. You're not looking for nuclear plant quality welds here. You're just trying to weld two panels together. But you just take your finger, daub it in there, fill in those little crevices and cracks, and that way when that primer dries, I could actually go get a paintbrush and smooth this out with a paintbrush too, but I don't have one, so not going to be able to do that. But like I said, just go along, and anytime you see there's a pinhole there, just kind of fill them in with your finger, and if they come back, fill them in again. And you can keep doing this as long as the paint's wet. And I put on a thick, heavy coat. It's starting to dry now, but I put on a thick, heavy coat of it, so I'm able to move it around a little bit. All right, so now I've gone around and I've shoved paint into all the little pinholes. There's another one. Just trying to look and see if I see other ones as I'm going here. Shoved paint into all the. And another thing I can do, where's my paint? There it is. Another thing I can do, like along this top edge here, I can put where the weld is, I can put a thick coat of primer along there too. I've pretty much done this side already. I bumped it, smeared it with my hand. Filled that in, see now? So now I've sealed up pretty much that whole welded edge there. All the pinholes are sealed up, all the weld marks are sealed up. And I got a thick coat of primer on there, but I'll let it dry. It's gonna take a little while, probably take an hour for it to dry. So let me let this dry completely so I can sand on it. And then once it's dry, we'll sand on it and see what it looks like when we're done. All right, I'll be back in a little while. Okay guys, just a short update here. So I wanted to go over this and let you guys see it one more time. Where's my primer at? What did I do? Here it is. So I've been looking at this thing, and some of these pinholes, they keep popping back up, and I'll just hit them with a little spray of primer just to kind of fill them in. They're getting less and less now. But I just wanted to show you guys how this looks. I got a pretty thick coat of primer on here now. But I'm just lightly hitting the areas where I see the pinholes pop back up again. As the primer dries and shrinks, some of them come back, open back up again. But let me show this to you. You can get a close-up view of it. And I've went around probably 5 or 6 times now, and I'll just go around here up close so you guys can kind of see. Yeah, it looks horrible because it's runny and, you know, splotchy, but I'm not worried about that because this primer is pretty thick. It goes on pretty thickly, and it's a pretty thick formula, so it goes on pretty thick. So it's going to be okay, but I'm going to let it dry. I see a spot right there, and then I rub the can against the paint right there, or the primer right there, so I'm spraying those 2 spots to fill them. This primer is pretty thick primer, so it fills in these little holes pretty nicely. So it's going to take a little bit for this to dry, but I just wanted to show it to you real quick to kind of see where we're at with it, so you can get an idea of what's going on here. And if you notice right up there's another taped off spot with primer on it. There was some previous body work up there that the paint was cracking on. Well, here, I'll just show it to you. The paint was cracking, and it wasn't rusted underneath of it yet, but the paint was cracked, and anytime you get paint that's cracked, it gets water in the cracks, and pretty soon it starts rusting. So I took my grinder that I had with my sanding disc on it and ground off the paint down to bare metal, and then I sanded it with that quarter sheet sander with the 180 on it, just sanded it smooth and then taped it off. And I'm going to prime it and paint it as well. So it's just something else just to try to keep this truck from rusting out any worse than it is. So anyhow, so that's how that looks. And to speed up the process, I wish I had a little bigger one, but they gave me this fan here I'm going to put up there. They say it's pretty powerful, so I'm going to plug it in and point it up towards this stuff. It'll help it to dry a little faster. So let's do that. Get some air blowing on it. We had a breeze earlier today, but now it's gone. I'll put that right up here where it's blowing air. I'm trying to figure out what the best angle is here. Try to get it to... Anyhow, we'll let that fan blow on it, and it'll help dry it out. It's gonna take a little bit. Like I said, I want this to be completely dry before I start sanding on it, because if it's not dry, it'll just smear and plug up the sandpaper. It won't dry completely. So let me let this dry a little longer, and then we'll come back and sand on it and see what it looks like when we're done. I'll be back. All right, guys. So just to let you know where I'm at on this, I kept spraying little spots of primer on where the pinholes were and let it build up. And then I turned this truck around to where the sun was shining on it. I had a little fan blowing on it, and it's been about 2 hours now, and it's pretty dry. So what I did is I got this quarter sheet sander, and it had a piece of sandpaper on it that was dry sandpaper. So I took it, I don't know what grit it is, probably about 80 grit. So I took it and I sanded off. I kept sanding right here around this weld, wherever the real heavy primer was, and it kept loading up. And when your sandpaper loads up like that, I just smack it against the tire, and it knocks the chunks off. It didn't knock them all off, but it knocks a lot of them off. So you can continue to use it. And I'm just sanding this down, trying to get the high the high areas off of it. I mean, I'm not going to get it perfect, and I'm not trying to get it perfect because this is, like I said, this is temporary. It's not going to be permanent. But it keeps loading up the sandpaper. You've got to keep cleaning it because this primer's really thick. If I'd have let this dry overnight, it'd probably be okay, but it's only been a couple of hours. But I got most of the high spots down now, and all the pinholes are pretty much gone, so I'm really not too worried about it. So I can take that, sand it down, just keep knocking the chunks off. And then I can take my sander, my quarter sheet sander. It's got 180 on it, which is pretty fine. I wish I had something in between, but I don't. I got a piece of metal stuck in my hand there, in my finger. So I'm going to hit it with that now. Again, this isn't going to be perfect. You know, this is not the finished product. It's just to get us through until we can get it to the body shop and get it painted. Because obviously there's going to have to be a little bit of filler put in here to clean that up, fill that in, smooth it out. So you can't wipe that off with a brake clean anymore because you'll just take the paint off. So I'm just wiping it off with a dry rag. Okay, so now we've done that. We got a few bare spots. So now I'm going to take my self-etching primer. I'm going to put another coat of primer on it. It's not going to be, I'm going to go a lot lighter now. The main thing is you want to make sure you get all the areas where there's any exposed bare metal. You want to make sure you get those cleaned up and primed. But I'm just going to prime the whole thing, so I'm not going to worry about it. And we'll take a look at it once I'm done spraying this coat of primer on there. All right, we're going to let that flash off, and it won't take long in the sun. It's already starting to dry out. So we'll let that flash off for a minute. While it's flashing off, let's take a look at it. Get you guys in here a little closer where you can see what's going on. So you can see how it looks. So here's how it looks now. So now you can see, trying to get it where you can see I gotta come over this way, I guess. There you go. I'll just go around this edge here. Now you can see where all those pinholes were. They're pretty much all gone. You know, and again, this is not the finished product. There's no body filler on this. It's just primer and weld. That's all it is. So it's not going to be perfect. But I did put a really heavy coat of primer right on the weld area because that primer's pretty thick. And I put a heavy coat on there so it'd fill it in. And that's what it looks like now. You can see all the pinholes are pretty much all gone. All right. And I'll zoom you guys in here a little closer so you can see a little better what I'm doing. There you go. Now see, now it's almost dry. You can see there's a little bit right here that hasn't flashed off yet, but over here is pretty much, we'll give it another minute or so. Got it in the sun like this, it dries pretty quickly. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get it with another coat of primer here. Okay, so that's 2 coats of primer on there now. Well, 2 coats this time. I mean, it's got all total of about 4 or 5 coats now, so that's probably enough. So we're gonna let that sit there and dry off a little while. And while that's doing that, let's go look at this front because I got it already done. And by the way, I have to definitely give my recommendation. If you got a black vehicle and you're wanting to do this Rust-Oleum roll bar and chassis paint, it's self-priming and it stops rust. So it's primer and paint, but look, I want you guys to read this, what it says here. It says 1-step epoxy coating and does not require a primer. It gives the appearance of a tough baked-on finish and provides excellent corrosion resistance. Ideal for use on roll bars, grill guards, frames, suspension, trailers, and equipment. So this stuff here is really good heavy-duty paint. It's actually an epoxy type paint. And let me show you what it looks like up here. Now that I finished this, you can see that. Now, of course, around there is a little bit of a mess because of the sanding I did and, you know, the overspray and stuff. But you can see it's a nice shiny gloss finish. And of course it doesn't look great because I sanded out some damage to the paint, so there's, you know, divots in the paint. But that's not going to rust now. You know, before when there was cracks in that paint, I never showed you guys this till after I started on it, but the paint was cracked and water was getting down in those cracks and it would have started rusting before long. So I went ahead and, since he's got to have the fender painted anyhow, I just went ahead and did that so he can have that repaired when he has the fender painted. So this stuff is, if you got a black vehicle, it's going to work really well for you. All right, so I'm going to pause the video because I want to let this primer dry completely before I start spraying. And I'm not going to sand it anymore. It's going to stay just like that. So once it dries, then we'll go ahead and we'll start painting it. But we got to wait for it to dry first. So I'll be back. All right, guys. Well, this is flashed off now. It's fairly dry. I don't want to touch where the paint is because I don't want to get the oil from my hands on it. But it's dry enough to paint. So now we're going to start laying down some color on it. And then we'll take a look at it. Now up there where I did the front up there, I put down 4 coats. And actually it was 8 coats because every time I sprayed, I started from the bottom, I sprayed up, and then I sprayed back down again. I don't know how many coats I'm going to put on this because we'll see how much paint I got. I only got 1 can of this stuff. So we'll see how far it goes. But I think I should be okay with it. All right, so let's get started here. First coat you put on here, you want it to be kind of light. You don't want it to be heavy. You don't want, this is your top coat, so you don't want runs in it. You want it to look halfway decent. You notice I went around the edge here first. Just kind of going over it to, if there's any areas I see that are light, just hitting them again. There we go. That's the first coat. Now we'll let that dry a second for a little bit. Zoom you guys in a little more here. You can see a little better. I'm glad the sun came out. It's almost gone though. It's going to be gone in about another 10 minutes. So, but I think we'll be all right. I'm just shaking the can while I'm waiting for that to kind of dry for a couple minutes. Again, when I'm done with this, it's not going to look like the paint over here. It's not going to look like that paint because that's automotive grade paint. This is just spray paint, so it's just temporary. It's going to keep it from rusting and make it look decent enough until they get a chance to get it to the body shop. Keep it from getting any worse. Look, sure, to me, it sure looks a whole lot better than it did when I started. All right, let's go ahead and put a second coat on it. Start over here again, since that's where I started to start with. Again, this coat's not a super heavy coat. It's just, I'm going a little bit slower, but trying to get it even. All right, let that coat dry. For a couple minutes. I'll just pause the video while it dries. Hold on, guys. All right, we're gonna go again. I'm hurrying a little bit too much here because the sun's going down. I got to run in it, and I just got a bug landed in it, so I had to get him out and made a little divot in the paint. I was going to try to slow down on this and make my coats a little heavier, but it's starting to cool off and my paint's going to run on me if I try to put a heavy coat on, so I'm just going to put light coats on. All right. That's the third coat. Starting to get a little bit of thickness to it now. All right, I'll come back in a minute. All right, let's do another coat. I got another bug in it. While I was waiting in between here. Getting evening time. Bugs are starting to come out, which is never good for a paint job. Another bug. I just painted over him. Dang it. Dang bugs. Well, fortunately, this isn't the final finish of the paint job, so a bug or two ain't gonna hurt anything. I'd rather they weren't in there, but they are, so. All right, now we'll let that dry a little bit. Sun is almost gone. I'll be back in a minute. All right, I was able to back the truck up a little bit, get just a little bit more sunshine out of it before the sun goes down. Do another coat. I'm really putting this paint on sooner than I should. I need to let it dry a little longer between coats, but I'm not putting heavy coats on, so it's not doing too bad. Got a few bugs in it, but again, not the final coat, so it doesn't, or the final finish, so it doesn't really matter. The bugs hate it a lot worse than I do, I can tell you that much. Heck of a way to die to be drowning in paint. All right. We might have time to do one more coat. I think that's what, 4 or 5. So let's let it dry for a minute, and then we'll come back and do at least one more coat. All right. Sun's about out of here, so let's, I got some runs in it because I'm putting it on too soon and too heavy, but it'll be all right. Doesn't have to be perfect. do this in the heat of the day, you can put a heavier coat on because it dries faster. But in the evening time like this, it tends to want to run a lot easier because it's cooler. Okay, so let's take a look at it now. So this is, again, it's not the finished product. You can still see obviously the outline of my welds, but they're pretty flat and, you know, looking a lot better than all that giant rust hole that was in there. And now we can take this thing, let it dry, peel the tape off, and when we take it to the body shop, we'll tell them just to strip it all the way down to bare metal to take all this back off again, so they can start with, you know, the body shop stuff to finish it with, so it'll have the proper stuff on it, because this is just temporary. Okay, guys, so I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit. I got a little bit left in the can, so I might put one more coat on it just to use the can up, because I don't need it for anything else, and it's almost gone anyhow. So I'll probably put one more coat on it. Unfortunately, I got some runs, but you know, if I'm really worried about the runs, I could let this dry for a couple days and then wet sand it with some 220 wet sandpaper and spray it again with some spray paint, and it would be flat again. But I'm not worried about it. It's just temporary. So I'm gonna go ahead and let it dry, probably spray another coat on it to empty out the can, and then we're gonna call it a night. I'll let it dry a little longer, peel the tape off, and tomorrow when the sun's up, we'll let it dry overnight. Tomorrow when the sun comes up, I'll take a final look at it, show you guys what it looks like. And then we got to go to the inside, and I got to still make that piece in here, but I got to take the tire off. I got to jack it up, put it on jack stands. So that's going to be a little bit risky, but I think I can do it okay. I'm going to put it on a flat surface in the garage anyhow, because I got to get it in there to weld, be able to weld, use my welder. And I think I got my problem with the welder figured out, so it should be running good now. So let's see what happens tomorrow. We'll take a look at this thing in the morning and go from there. All right, guys, I'll talk to you in the morning. We'll take one final look at this thing. See you in the morning. Bye. All right, guys, it's the next day. I've let this paint dry overnight. I just wanted to do a quick ending to this video to kind of show you guys the end result of this. It's not, you know, you understand, again, this is not the finished product. It's just putting the metal in and spraying paint on it to protect it. Last night the sun started going down, started cooling off, and I was trying to get the paint on before the sun went down so it would dry quicker, and it's got some runs in it because I didn't wait long enough and it wasn't warm enough for the paint not to run. So it's got some runs in it. I mean, it's not perfect, but again, the metal's covered. It's protected until they can get it to a body shop and, you know, get it painted properly by a body man. So let's take a look at it real quick. This is what it looks like. This is the finished product. I'll kind of get back like this first to start out with. We'll take a look at it, just kind of take a overall view of it here. You know, again, you can see the outline of it obviously, but there's no rust there. You know, it's got all new metal in it now. All the old rust is gone, and you can see, I'll just go around the weld line here. You can see I put a really heavy coat of primer on there. It sealed up all those pinholes. So that's kind of how it looks. You know, again, it's got some runs in it. You can see runs. There's a bug right there. I just scraped out of it. You know, bugs landed on it after I got it painted. And even while I was painting it, I painted some of them inside the paint. So they're there for now. But anyhow, and actually I touched it right here this morning, and my palm prints on it right there, because the paint still isn't completely dry. It's still a little bit green because it's kind of cool out here today. So anyhow, that's what it looks like. Now I got to go to the inside and do that. I got to put the car in the garage and jack it up, take this tire off, and then we're going to work on that. There is some overspray out here on the outside a little bit, but I'll just take a towel and spray it with a little bit of brake clean and wipe that off, and then all that overspray will come off there. That won't be a big deal. There's some overspray up there too I got to take off, but anyhow, that's the way it looks. You know, like, again, it's not perfect, but it's okay. It's obviously a lot better than it was. It's all new metal, and now it's not going to rust out anymore. So quite a bit longer than the last one did. Now, one thing I will tell you guys, and I'm going to tell these guys the same thing, if you do this, when you take it to the body shop, you need to tell them you want it stripped all the way back down to bare metal, because this is spray paint, okay? It's not automotive grade paint. You don't want it left on the surface. You want them to sand it all the way back down to bare metal, and then start with probably a epoxy based primer, a heavy solids epoxy based primer, and primer the bare metal so it's sealed with the proper, with epoxy based primer, and then proceed with the body work and the painting process. So anyhow, that's how that looks. Now I'm going to start on the inside. I'll start on that today, and I'll make another series of videos on that too. So all right guys, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye.